Hello and welcome to Sports Update. Today we'll be looking at the latest sports news from around the region and beyond.
We'll also look at the latest happening in Evangel sports and check out the big events in pro sports. I'm Wyatt Long.
And I'm Aid Richardson. This is Sports Update on EU TV.
Thanks for joining us on Sports Update. Today we have the latest on Evangel Sports, and later Sports Information Director Isaac Granado will be here to talk about his recent promotion. But first, let's talk about Evangel men's tennis.
The Evangel men's tennis team had a dominant showing when they faced off against Baker this past weekend. The team traveled up to Kansas in what would prove to be a fruitful effort as the Valor absolutely dominated Baker, sweeping the team in an overall score of 7-0. Standout players include James McGrath and Daryl Wong, who both swept their opponents in singles and doubles competition. Sidney Dollar also had a respectable performance in his own right as he also swept his opponent. A huge win for the men's tennis team as they head to Oklahoma to take on Wesleyan on Tuesday.
The Evangel Valor women's tennis team found themselves on the wrong end of a close match against Baker University this past week. The Valor did find some success in the singles matches with Anna Bielica and Abigail Cheney and Bethany Overturf all winning their matches in dominating fashion. However, it wasn't enough to put the Valor ahead of Baker. Baker University would win 3 singles matches of their own, along with sweeping the doubles games. But despite the loss, the Valor showed Baker some very tough competition, only narrowing losing the day with a final point count of 4-3 in favor of Baker.
The Evangel Valor softball team had a lot to prove when they took on the William Penn Statesmen in a doubleheader this past Sunday. Game 1 proved to be an offensive showcase for the Valor as they had 5 unanswered points in the first inning alone. The Valor continued to build momentum and won the first game with a final score of 10-0. This victory was due in no small part to the outstanding pitching by Samantha Romano. The Valor used this momentum built in the first game to propel them forward into the next game. The Valor came out hot and never cooled down as they yet again swept the Statesmen. The second contest would end with a final score of 9-0. This win was aided by some superb hitting by Mariah Hanner and Brooke Arnold. All in all, a huge victory for an Evangel team that is finally beginning to consistently deliver.
The Evangel Valor baseball team had mixed results this past week when they took on Park University. The Valor started off the doubleheader with a dominant performance against a stout Park offense. Austin Dill would shut down Park, holding them to only 2 runs. Evangel's offense would do their part, scoring 7 runs to cap off the game with a final of 7-2. However, that performance by the Valor seemed to wake the sleeping giant when Park came out firing in the second game. Park University offense would hit their stride, scoring 14 runs, 13 of which came in the final 3 innings. The Valor would try their best to keep pace. However, even with 7 runs of their own, it wouldn't be enough to stop Park. The late game surge would put the final at 14-7. Well, Aiden, a lot of good stuff from Evangel Sports this past week. We did see some losses in there. We saw baseball split. We saw women's tennis lose. But let's not take away from the absolutely amazing stuff that we saw from the other teams.
Absolutely. You know, we say it every week. The softball team in particular, they are capable of doing great things. And it just seems like sometimes they're capable of playing down to their opponents. But this week we saw them just absolutely dominate their opponents. And that's something that we want to see at every game because we know they're capable of that.
Right. And we've also seen men's tennis absolutely dominating people, but we've also seen them struggle a little bit with a couple games. So it's nice to see them get back on track with an absolutely dominant performance. And then women's tennis, while they did lose, it was not a dominant loss necessarily. It was not a hard loss. It was a very, very close game against a very good Baker University.
I agree. You know, the same could really be said for baseball. You know, splitting a game, obviously you kind of want to go one way or the other as far as getting the win. But, I mean, walking away with 1 win is a lot better than getting swept. And the baseball team needed this because, you know, they've had a rough couple of weeks. So it's good to see them start building momentum.
Absolutely.
Well, coming up later, we'll be checking out some of the big NBA and MLB games that were played this past weekend.
And in just a few, Sports Information Director Isaac Granado will be here to talk about his newly acquired position. Stay with us.
Severe weather can strike anytime, anywhere, but there's a simple way to stay safe. Hey, Jim Cantore here. I stay safe in dangerous weather by planning ahead. You can stay safe too with a few easy steps. Build an inexpensive kit with supplies for your family's needs. Write down important information like phone numbers and medications. Always talk with your family and remember any pets in your planning. Be ready, be safe. Start your plan today at ready.gov/plan.
Welcome back to Sports Update. Here with us today is Sports Information Director Isaac Renato to talk about his recent promotion. Isaac, thank you for being here with us today.
For sure, appreciate your time.
So how long have you been at Evangel?
I actually just started at Evangel back in August as their sports information assistant. I had previously been at College of the Ozarks, so it's a rival of Evangel. But I was there for 4 years, graduated in May, and then didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I had spent 3 years in sports information at C of O as a student, so I was like, well, I'll see what I can find. Saw that there was an opening for a sports information assistant here and figured, hey, it's close to Branson, might as well try it. Applied, got it, so I started here in August and then just recently got promoted.
So you mentioned you got promoted, so what job did you hold before this?
So before that, I was a sports information assistant. Not much different than what I'm doing now. It's just a little bit less responsibilities as I have now. Pretty much just did a lot of the recaps and statting at games. So it's just a little bit of a smaller role than what I currently do.
So how was that transition going from one job to kind of a new set of responsibilities?
Yeah, the transition was a little smooth, but I mean also in some aspects of it, it's rough. Because like I said, you have that higher workload, you have more that's on your plate, more responsibilities. So it's kind of the same stuff that you're doing before is being passed over to you as well, but then there's also, speaking to the media, more responsibility in that, and just making sure that you get everything out on time. And because I don't have a boss that's over me, I have to make sure that I'm making my own schedule and getting everything out like I need to be. So,
before we get into a bunch of other stuff, can you just kind of give us a brief description of the things you do and of the responsibilities you have with this position?
So pretty much the main thing that we do is we keep statistics at all the basketball, softball, baseball, soccer, any sport that we pretty much have that we host here. You'll see me doing the statistics there. Also do a little bit of PA work. After the games are over, typically, we have someone who writes the recap, and that falls on my plate. So during the games, I'm like, oh, this looked good. That was a good play. let's say Grant Kosenki hit a double left field, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely gonna write that down and I'm gonna get that in the recap. So by the time the game's over, pretty much just put everything together, push it out to KY3, Color 10, the write-ups, and send it out to all the people at home, post it on our Evangel Athletics website. Otherwise, during the week in the office, it's a lot of just right now getting ready for camps. A lot of summer camps are going to be coming up for young prospective athletes who maybe are looking at playing at Evangel. So that's the biggest thing right now. Otherwise, it's coordinating with the media. Hey, we have an event coming up here. If you want to come out and take some pictures, get some B-roll footage, and have a story about it, we'd really appreciate it. So that's pretty much it.
How is it dealing with those other news companies, like you mentioned, Color 10 and KY3? Like, how is that process work with dealing with them?
Yeah. Whenever I first started, it was a little intimidating, just because you're like, oh, wow, KY3, Color 10, you grow up, you're like watching these news stations, and you're like, wow, when you're small, it's like big thing. But now it's just a lot of communication that goes into it. You got to be sure that you're at least giving them a lot of time ahead of time to know, hey, there's an event coming up, because typically it's like, oh, well, we already had something scheduled for this day, so we'll try our best. But it's good working with them. Mark Splint at KY3 is a great guy. Dan Lucy at Color 10. They're all hard workers, and they're great at what they do.
So you mentioned that you obviously follow several sports, all the different sports. Is there a particular sport that gives you more challenges than other ones do?
That's tough. I love volleyball to death, but I would say it's probably the hardest sport to stat. It's just very fast. You have to track every ball touch. So, hey, if someone hit the ball here, I got to get their number down. And then recaps, it's kind of difficult to sum up what happens in such like a fast-paced game. Hey, this person touched the ball, this person touched the ball, they attacked it. So I would say volleyball is probably the most difficult sport that I work with. But that's nothing against volleyball. I love it, and I love the team, so yeah.
On the other note, is there a sport that's your favorite to follow?
Oh, man. That's tough. I like basketball a lot. I grew up playing basketball, so that's always partial to me. Bert and the guys had a great year, so obviously it helps when you're winning to be able to watch good games. Also have my Evangel softball pullover on, so I love Jay and the girls. They're doing great right now. They're on a hot streak, so come out and watch them on Thursday and Friday. They play at home.
So you talked a little bit about some of the challenges you have, but whenever you think more specifically with keeping the stats with Evangel Sports, what kind of challenges do you face overall?
Yeah, I would say overall, keeping stats, you can run into a lot of issues. Someone unplugs the computer and, it's on life support battery-wise and it dies. Well, then you got to start writing it, and writing it's a pain, because then you got to pretty much just put everything over once you get it all, once you get your computer rebooted back up. So I would say that, it's not a super difficult job, but if you're not a people person and you don't like to communicate, it's probably not a job for you.
So you've talked a lot about the different communication aspects that you have with this job, but when we think more simple, what does just a typical day in your job look like?
So a typical day is probably me coming into the office, sitting down, checking my emails, making sure that I don't have anything pressing going on. I usually always know if we have a sport event going on in the afternoon, so I always try to make sure that I know when that's going to happen. And then after that, it's writing previews or getting events pushed out to the media to let them know, hey, this is what's going on. By the afternoon time, usually it's me getting back to coaches who need something. Just pretty much trying to push out enough stuff for them to get coverage for their sports, because I also do social media for them. So making sure that we get all that stuff out there for them to get recruits and get other people interested in Evangel Athletics is pretty much a typical day in my life.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Isaac, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Coming up, we'll look at the accident involving Steelers quarterback Dwayne Haskins and the latest from the NBA. Stay tuned.
My kids put skis on as they were learning to walk. I want my kids to be able to have those moments with their kids. being a scientist, I'm worried about climate change in so many different ways for my kids. From the second you have a child, you want to do everything to protect them. I think our action on climate change is no different. It's just an extension of being a mom.
There is a road laid out for me.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
Leading down to the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
What do you think?
I know this road is there for me. If I'm really free, take me down to the river and walk.
Good morning. Hope you all had a good weekend and are ready to be inspired. One quick thing I want to remind you guys to be studying.
Major key alert. Did you just look at your phone while you was in class? You played yourself.
Class, today we're talking about inspirational quotes.
You want to get that paper? You better turn in that paper and get an A+. That's a major key. Another one. Mogul talk. You want to reach the mountaintop? You got to go hard. To succeed, you have to believe. Stay focused. Fly higher than the eagle. Don't ever play yourself. The key is to make it, so make it.
Louise, can you give me an example of an inspirational quote from recent history?
Don't play yourself. The key is to make it.
And who said that?
I did. Now that's a major key alert.
Learn the real major keys to getting to college at getschool.com.
The Milwaukee Bucks faced the Cleveland Cavaliers in a thrilling contest this past Sunday. The Bucks headed into the contest with a bit of a handicap as their entire regular rotation was being sat for the game, as they were waiting to find out what their final seed placement in their division would be. The Cavs took advantage of this lack of star power as they stayed one step ahead of the Bucks for the entire contest. However, the story of this game will be the Bucks' backup squad surprising the Cavs. After a rough first half of the contest, the Bucks came out swinging, and the result was a much closer game than earlier anticipated. Milwaukee's Jordan Nora had a great contest as he stepped up to lead the team. He ended the game with 29 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. Despite the strong effort from the bench, the Cavaliers ultimately prevailed as they won the contest with a final score of 133 to 115. Despite this loss, this was a great showing for Milwaukee's players who do not usually get this amount of playing time.
The NBA saw some more tightly contested action this past week when the Los Angeles Lakers traveled to Denver to face the Nuggets. This game would become a back-and-forth exchange of offensive might, with both teams scoring well over 100 points. While the Nuggets proved to be strong contenders, two standout performances on the Lakers would be their undoing. Malik Monk had a career-best 41-point day, and his teammate Austin Reeves set career highs with 31 points, 16 rebounds, and 10 assists. These standout performances would be the key LA needed when they found themselves going into overtime, with each team tied at 135. After another quarter of back-and-forth action, LA would find themselves in the win category with a final score of 146 to 141. Well, Aiden, a lot of high-scoring action in the NBA and a lot of great stuff, even with backups in, as you mentioned. Some really unsung heroes stepping up this week in the NBA.
Absolutely. You said it best. There's guys like Malik Monk and Jordan Nora who just had outstanding games, but they're not names you think of right away when you think of NBA superstars. And that just proves that, number one, if you do get the chance, then you have to be ready. And number two, that just about all these guys are capable of delivering at a high level. So it's not so much the talent anymore, it's just when do they get an opportunity to show it. The NBA is just full of outstanding players. They're constantly scouting and taking guys their freshman year of college, taking them into the NBA. So it's just really exciting to see these guys that don't necessarily get that playing time regularly step up and be team leaders.
Right, and in a sport that is so focused on point scoring, it's good to see a guy like Austin Reeves come in there and set career highs not only in points, but in assistance and rebounds as well.
Absolutely. Austin Reeves is a great all-around player, and he could be one of those next big superstars. You just never know.
Right.
Well, heartbreaking news for NFL fans everywhere as Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Dwayne Haskins has passed away at the young age of 24. The former first-round pick was entering into his fourth season in the NFL and seemingly had the entire league on notice. His potential truly seemed limitless. However, that potential was cut short by a freak accident this past weekend. On April 9th, Haskins was trying to cross an interstate in Broward County, Florida during the early hours of the morning. Unfortunately, while attempting to cross this interstate, Haskins was struck down by a dump truck. Haskins passed away shortly after. As of now, the incident has been ruled an accident, but a further investigation is pending. The sports world is devastated as we mourn the loss of yet another promising star who was taken way too soon.
The St. Louis Cardinals found themselves on the wrong end of a miracle play this past week when they took on the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Cardinals came out hot, scoring 3 runs in the first inning. However, Pittsburgh's second baseman Michael Chavis would put the Pirates ahead with a go-ahead grand slam in the third. This put the score at 5-3 in favor of the Pirates. The rest of the game would be a defensive effort from both sides, with the 5th and 6th innings being scoreless. Each team would score another run in the 7th, putting the Cardinals behind by 4 deep into the game. This deficit would be too much for the Cardinals to come back from, ending the day with a final score of 9-4 in favor of the Pirates. Well, Aiden, the Cardinals season is now in full swing. They're out of spring training, they're into the regular season, and they started off well, and they even started off well in this game, but ultimately they found themselves on the end of a kind of, not a once-in-a-lifetime play necessarily, but a very rare play in baseball, a go-ahead grand slam, and it seemed to just kind of demoralize that team, and they were really never able to get back in it.
Baseball is absolutely one of those sports that's built off momentum. You know, you can have a game where no one scores and then someone hits one hit and the entire team goes after that. So it's really just a back and forth game, and I think the Cardinals are entering a dangerous territory where they're the team with potential. And in my opinion, that's the kiss of death in sports, because potential means that you have the ability to be good, but you're not. And the Cardinals, they have all the ability. They've just had a huge signing. They have these great young players, but they just haven't been delivering like an elite team should. Whereas the Pirates, they've been on fire recently, and I mean, like as you said, a once-in-a-lifetime play. So it's just very interesting to see how this rest of the season is going to pan out for both of these teams.
Absolutely. And of course, in regards to Dwayne Haskins, our thoughts and prayers are out for his family. Absolutely tragic. It's horrible to see a star gone this long or gone this soon.
I agree. As you just said, you know, it's something we see all too often with young athletes, and especially given the circumstances of this death, it's just all the more tragic. Well, coming up, we'll be looking at the Player of the Week and upcoming games that you don't want to miss. Stay tuned.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Let 211 be your guiding light for mental health and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org.
Behold, the angry giant. Behold, the angry giant. Behold, the angry giant! Behold, the angry giant! It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff. Like making sure your kids are in the right seats for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Hey, did you know that 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Go to theshelterpetproject.org and search your local shelters and rescues. Go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.
It's now time to announce the Sports Update Evangel Player of the Week. This week, we highlight freshman Carly Romains.
We are highlighting freshman Carly Romains for her incredible performance this past week in softball, including that she had 12 overall runs batted in the 7th, 7 doubles, 65 plate appearances, and 54 at-bats. So congratulations to Carly. Some absolutely incredible stuff from Carly this past weekend. And again, one of those standout performances on a day of standout performances with such incredible stuff from the softball team. She still manages to become the cream of the crop in that.
Absolutely. It seems like we see that almost every week, where the team that plays the best collectively also has the standout player. So it's interesting to see that, you know, because it's always said when a team does well, that means everyone does well. And so it's exciting to see Carly really step up. The softball team just had a great game, something that was really needed to build some momentum, and I'm excited to see what comes next.
Absolutely.
Well, let's take a look at what's coming up in Valor Sports. Men's golf plays Tuesday, April 12th at a to-be-announced time at the Sand Creek Station.
Women's golf plays on Tuesday, April 12th at a to-be-announced time at Sand Creek Station.
Softball plays Wednesday, April 13th at Missouri Valley in Marshall, Missouri at 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. and Friday, April 15th versus Culver Stockton at home at 2 p.m. and 4 p.m.
Baseball plays Friday, April 15th at Missouri Valley. They have 2 games, one at 1 p.m., one at 3:30. And then on Saturday, April 16th, this is again at Missouri Valley and again at 1 p.m. and 3:30.
Men's tennis plays Tuesday, April 12th at 1 p.m. at Oklahoma Wesleyan. And on Monday, April 18th at 1 p.m. versus Bethany at home.
Women's tennis plays Tuesday, April 12th at 1 p.m. against Oklahoma Wesleyan. And on Monday, April 18th on 1 p.m. versus Bethany, that is at home.
Men's indoor track and field runs Friday, April 15th at noon at the UCM Mule Outdoor Relays in Warrensburg, Missouri. Let's go, Evangel Valor! For more information on upcoming games, final scores, and more, visit evangelathletics.com.
And that is all the time we have for today on Sports Update. I'm Wyatt Long.
And I'm Aiden Richardson. This is our last show, so be sure to join us in the fall for the next season. This has been Sports Update on EU TV.